There's a lot of talk about power in culture today, but the truth is, a lot of men feel anything but powerful. Today's guest is a part of a program called Powerful Man, and he's going to talk about how men can step into their power in a way that actually makes the world and their relationships and their families and themselves better. Today's guest is Doug Holt.
Men, this is your chance to strive for greatness, to be all you can be, to make your mark on history. Your chance to improve and sharpen yourself, to grapple with your weaknesses and turn them into strength. Welcome to the Manlihood ManCast with Josh Hatcher.
Gentlemen, welcome to the Manlihood ManCast. I want to encourage you guys, if you are getting something out of our podcast, I want you to invest in manlyhood. And the way that you can do that is, one, if you want to sponsor the new season of Manlihood, which is coming up this fall, I want you to get in touch with me. So if you've got a business or something that serves men, get in touch with me at manlihood.com, at gmail.com. And shoot me an email. Let me know, hey, look, I've got this business or this coaching program or this whatever that serves men, and I want to get it in front of your fantastic audience, and I'm going to help you do it, and I'll get you what the rates are, what the costs are. We'll work something out in a way where you can get it in front of some guys, a lot of guys, actually. So I'm excited to bring you that opportunity, so let me know. Let's make it happen. Also, if you want to invest in manlyhood and you don't have anything to sponsor, but you want to help us out, you can do so by sharing this video with somebody. You can do this by leaving a rating or a review on Spotify or on iTunes or Apple Podcasts, and just let people know about the podcast and what your experience is with it. Let's get the word out about what's happening here at Manlihood. Guys, today's guest is really inspirational. He's been all over the world. He's learned from shamans in the Amazon rainforest. He's been a business coach. He's helping men to be everything they can be and to step into their power as husbands and as leaders. He's creating quite a stir on social media in a way that's actually helping men to become better. So he's doing great work at The Powerful Man. So check out this conversation with Doug Holt. Doug, it's great to have you on the show, man. Welcome to the Manlihood ManCast.
Josh, I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Hey, man, you're doing some pretty good work over at The Powerful Man. Why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself and the work that you're doing there, if you could?
Yeah, absolutely. I apologize again. I have a little bit of a cold. I have a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old at home that would like to pass things on to me. But I'm excited to be here anyway, so hopefully it doesn't hurt your listeners' ears. A little bit about me. So I've been an entrepreneur my entire life. I've been in the coaching or mentoring space for over 3 decades, over 30 years. I was actually thinking about this yesterday as I was talking to somebody. This is kind of what I'm born to do, I believe, is helping other people. And through that time, obviously I got married. Maybe not obviously, but I got married, became a father. And those are two of the things that I hold most important to me. Right, is that being a father, being a husband, and a good friend. So when people ask me, hey, what is it you do? First and foremost, I talk about my children and about my wife, and then about the people around me, my friends and the people that I support. I think that's more important than the accolades. I've been a CEO of a multinational. I've bought and sold and run more companies than I could probably remember at this point in my career. And really my passion, Josh, is helping men really find themselves or refine themselves, because I believe that men are the leaders in the home, and that way they can guide their families along their journey.
Yeah, somebody asked me today what I did for a living, and I mean, I have a day job, but I started out with, I run a podcast for men because when that becomes your mission, it's like, okay, then everything else is to kind of support that mission. And I'm okay with that, I'm okay with that. I think that's the way it should be. So
I do too. I think, when I was coaching before this, I did a lot of business coaching, and that's what I was known for. It was before coaching was really a thing. It was around, but it wasn't talked about the way it is today. And one of the things that I found were most men and women, because I coached both men and women at the time, just lost their passion. They would always say, Doug, how do I find my purpose? And for someone like yourself, you lead with the podcast because you have a mission or a purpose that you're on right now. And I think that's so prevalent when you think of the number 2 cause of death for men our age is suicide, according to the CDC. And that's not talked about. You hear about heart disease, you hear about diabetes, you hear about stroke, but the number 2 cause of death for men, and it's actually boys too, right? So it actually starts, I believe, I want to say 12 years old all the way up to like 47. And don't quote me on those exact ages, but we're in the rough ballpark, is suicide. And a lot of times when you think of suicide, you think of someone who's lost, right? No one's setting out to commit suicide. I think it's really important. The number 1 cause of death is basically unexplained death, right? Accidental death, which a lot of those are also going to be suicides. So I think it's an important thing to have a mission to be a man. You want to have a purpose that gets you up in the morning, and you don't feel like you're dragging yourself to work to grind it out, but really you're being pulled by something that's bigger than you.
How did you find that for yourself?
Yeah, so it's a great question. It's changed throughout my life. To be frank with you, I don't think a purpose. I think that people put too much weight on a purpose, and what I mean by that is, I think people think, I got to find my purpose, the reason I'm here, and it's got to last forever. And I don't agree with that. And having worked with thousands of people at this point in my career, a purpose can last for a moment, a week, a year, or a lifetime coming through. Now, for me, working with men, I started doing men exclusively about 7 years ago. And the reason that became my purpose is, you know this, when you help somebody, right, that's the biggest reward. It's the most selfish thing you can do is help somebody else. And when you change people's lives to the level, we've had thousands of men go through the Powerful Man program at this point, and you have men come to you with tears in their eyes, or you get letters from their children about how they got their father back. Or guys say, hey, you saved my life, and they mean it. That's not tongue in cheek. It's hard. I've never done heroin or anything like that, but I got to imagine it's a similar high that you just want to keep coming back. And it's something that I've always been good at, is taking complex information and breaking it down in a way that people can understand. What I'll call mentoring, or it could be coaching or what have you. It's just something that I've always had an affinity towards. And thus, it's come easy for me. And I like when I like working hard, but I also like when things are easy and fill me up. And so that all those things kind of pointed in this direction of coaching and mentoring, and working with men and businessmen in particular just became a natural proclivity, because it's who I was, right? It's the people I like talking to naturally. So it just became, I just gravitated towards it.
That's awesome. So, I know that at the Powerful Man, you guys are doing, you have all kinds of things that you talk about, because being a man has so many different aspects. I've really been intrigued listening to when you guys start talking about marriage and relationships in particular. So maybe we could just talk about that for a minute. What are some of the things that guys really need help with in that department?
Wow, that's a big question, and I love it. And I wrote a best-selling book on a man's guide to how to save your marriage without talking about it. And I did that because we wanted to really get it out there. The Powerful Man, we don't talk about it as a company. We talk about it as a movement. There's about, just to be clear, there's about 36 people that work behind the scenes at the Powerful Man, men and women. And I want to state that because I don't want this to come across like these are all my concepts, or I'm this guy that's doing all this great work. It really is a village and a team that's doing it. Really what ends up happening in my experience, Josh, and this happened to me too, so this is a very, in the trenches knowledge. What happens is men, when they get married, we think kind of like, check that box. We said I do. Cool. We're going to be great. And over time, work gets in the way. You throw a few kids in the mix. Sleep becomes, something you just remember as a distant memory back in the day when you actually got sleep, especially if you have young ones involved coming in. And even if you have teenagers, right, that brings a whole other element of worry and stress and growth. as you're coming through. And what ends up happening a lot of times is the couple, the man and the woman, start to part, right? There starts to become they feel more like roommates, right, than they do lovers, passionate lovers, the way they first started. They lose that love and feeling. And typically, the men don't see it as quickly as the women do. And if you look it up, we know if we get married, right, 50% of marriages end in divorce. That's just a statistic. Nobody thinks theirs is going to be one of those 50, right? And that 50%, we all think we're going to be different. But out of those divorces, 70% of them are initiated by the woman. That's a huge statistic. That number goes up to 90%, Josh, if the woman's got a college degree or higher. That means 90% of the divorces, if your wife's got a college degree or higher, are going to have to be initiated by the woman. And the reason this happens, again, to go back to your question, is Dr. Robert Glover's got a great book. It's called No More Mr. Nice Guy. I don't know if you've read it, but it really talks about this symptom is the guy decides, like, we want to make our wife happy. She becomes disillusioned, like this life that she saw and the husband that she saw in front of her is no longer there. She can see our potential, but we're not living up to it. And so we decide, you know what? Hey, I have to make her happy. I'm gonna cook dinner more. I'm gonna clean the house. I'm gonna take out the trash. I'm gonna fix her car. I'm gonna buy her, a piece of jewelry. I'm gonna take her on that vacation. We try all these things to make her happy, and it can last for a very short, fleeting moment, but it's actually not what she needs. Because what we're doing here as men is we're seeking external validation. We want our wife to say, yep, you're a great husband. You're a good guy, right? I really appreciate it. But that's not what happens. And then what ends up happening is our wife realizes that she can control our emotions. She can trigger us, so to speak, and get it. Commonly, the common vernacular, really is, they call it a shit test often. I call it really a safety test, right? She's looking for safety. Am I safe? And she knows at this point, like my wife knew, like, hey, if I can control Doug, if I can control his feelings and get him angry, upset, hurt, whatever it is, then how is he going to protect me? And so she has to take more of a masculine alpha role, which, most women aren't naturally wanted. They have a more femininity. Men, we have more testosterone naturally. And so when you have this disconnect, you have a man who is trying to make his wife happy. He comes across as needy. She no longer feels safe. Now it's emotionally safe. She no longer feels emotionally safe. And that disconnect really happens. Gets bigger and bigger and bigger over time. To what happens a lot of times, unfortunately, I see, because we do have thousands of men that come through our programs, is it turns into an emotional affair or a physical affair, or it's a wife that says, hey, look, I'm not going to get divorced because of religious or philosophical beliefs, so therefore I'm going to live a life of quiet desperation. And I hear this all the time from the women. It's really sad.
Yeah, I have found that typically, even in my own life, right? Like if you ask the spouse to give a letter grade, right? Like, okay, how do you both give it a grade? Like the guy's always like a B plus, and she's always like a C minus or worse, like always. And he's like, I didn't know it was that bad. And she's like, well, it's not bad, but it could be better.
Yeah, and that's just it, right? Guys, we're notoriously we don't ask for directions. That's always the joke, right? We're gonna find our way, but women do. And what we found over, the past 7 years or so is that the women typically start making a plan to exit the marriage 2 years in advance of the man knowing. So it means 2 years she's going to start she's going to be given all the hints, dropping everything. And the guys, it's not that we're dumb, but we're just like, okay, I'm not happy, but it's going to get better. And we live on this hopium. I did, and I've just seen thousands of men do it too. So I'm certainly not saying everybody does. But we hope it's going to get better. And especially men like yourself who are willing to do the extra work. You've got several things going on in your life. So I can tell you probably have a similar story to me of like, hey, I can take care of it. I can pull myself up by my own bootstraps. If stuff hits the fan, I'll pull it together. I can out hustle or outwork somebody else. But that doesn't work in relationships. We've just never been taught. We've always been taught that men and women are the same, and that's just not true. We communicate differently. We have different brain functions. We have different hormones. And so there's nowhere else in the animal kingdom that we lump the male and female of a species together, except for all of a sudden we're saying, well, it should just be easy, You know, looking at your setup, we were talking about this offline, just lighting, right? There's tutorials on lighting, there's books and all kinds of things, but you get married and we just expect it to be easy. Like, yeah, I got married. And no one's teaching us how to relate as we grow together.
Yeah, for sure. Well, like I had this conversation with my wife just recently. She was saying that, you know, she wanted more intimacy, and I don't mean sex, I mean like intimacy.
Yeah.
And in my mind, I'm thinking, you know, it's because she felt like she didn't really know what's going on inside of me, right? Like, and that she wants me to fully know what's going on inside of her. And interestingly enough, I usually know what's going on inside of her. Like she tells me, and I can see her and understand her. But like, the only thing that I have to go on in our relationship, right, is if you knew what was really going on inside of me, you wouldn't want anything to do with me. You know, like I'm scary on the inside sometimes, you know,
Yeah.
and I feel like my job is protecting you from that beast that has all kinds of crazy thoughts and attitudes and things he wants to say and keeps his mouth shut about because they're not going to help anybody. They're just, you know, and so I'm like, yeah, okay, honey, I'll work on trying to be more open with you. but like, you know, like, is that a common thing? How do you work through that?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's very common. So I'll give you the short answer, and I'll give you a backup story that I think will explain this and why this happens for us men so much. And it's just a theory, but yeah, it happens all the time. And what happens here is, if your wife doesn't know what's going on for you, right? And this goes for me too. My wife's a coach for women, so I get to hear both sides, which makes it easier for me. She doesn't feel emotionally safe, right? She feels lost at sea, so to speak. And then all too often what happens for a woman is if she doesn't feel connected, right, then she can't feel safe. So she needs to have these bids of connection. That's what women talk about, being vulnerable, so to speak. But it's really a bid for connection. It's like, I need to connect to you so I know that I'm safe with you, and that when the bad guy down the street kicks in the door, that Josh is going to come running and save me, right? And I know you would, you know you would, but she needs this reassurance. But also, women know that because their hormone cycle fluctuates so much, they know that they can come across as crazy, and they know what's going on in their own head. And then how do I know that Josh is going to be there, or Doug, in my case with my wife, is going to be there for me emotionally when I need them the most, if I don't know what's going on in their world?
Yeah.
So when we look at it, you know, I've talked to so many people about this. Anthropologically, we look at back in time. So let's say you and I are going out. Back in the day, we're cavemen. You know, we probably act like cavemen. You get a bunch of guys together, they act like 14-year-olds, right?
Right.
So back in the day, we're going to go hunt a woolly mammoth, right? We're going out there. We got our spears. We're ready to go. You and I can't talk, right? Because if we talk, we're going to scare it away. So we've had to go, you know, you go there, like we're pointing to where to go, or gestures and grunts very quietly as we stealthily go through. On the flip side, the women historically would be more the gatherers, right? They're taking care of the kids. They're also gathering the berries. However, because they usually didn't have weapons, it would look something like this. They would say to themselves, my wife's named Erin. She might say, hey, Erin, we're going to go out and get the berries, but we're not going to get the berries by the river. We're going to get the berries by the tree, but not the big tree, the small tree, because the ones on the big tree are poisonous. The ones on the small tree are really good, but we need to get them when the sun's up because that's when they're the most ripe. But you also got to watch out because there's a saber-toothed tiger down the way, and he's actually going to attack. So make sure the kids are close to you, and if I'm going to go get the berries, you get the idea. So it's a lot of detail because they could have killed their tribe because the plants could be poisonous. When are they too tart? Also, women would talk as a form of security because it would scare off the saber-toothed tiger, right? Meanwhile, as guys, we're grunting because we got to be quiet to kill the prey to bring it back. And so over time, that has manifested itself to present day where women are very talkative. That's why if you're close to your wife, she's going to talk your ear off about her day, right? And it's a hint, guys. If your wife is not sharing her day with you, she's sharing it with somebody else. Guarantee it. Now, it could be a girlfriend, parents, you know, whoever. But this is what happens. We call it unloading the berries, right? You have to, as guys, we have to hold our basket. Hey, tell me about your day. and then let her fill that up without interrupting. That's one of the techniques we teach the guys to do. But the point being is, I could say, Josh, how was your day? You're going to go, good. How was yours? Good. And we're done. We're complete. That doesn't work with our wives.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. You mentioned a story. Is that a personal story about that you?
No, I was just talking about this whole the anthropological story of how men and women interact. And I've seen this represented so many times. So they'll call what the woman is doing, calling the meadow. That's how we describe it, because she's going into the meadow. And so one of the techniques we teach our men is what's called berry collecting. So at the end of the day, make sure you collect all your wife's berries, because if you don't, she's not able to be grounded, right? She needs that grounding to unload all that information to slip back into her feminine.
Yeah. Yeah. I always struggle sometimes, when you say slip back into the feminine and you kind of mentioned the masculine energy, I always personally kind of struggle to see, like, I don't believe I have a feminine side. I'm a man, right? But understanding, there are things that I do that may not line up with the masculine mindset, right? Like, do you think that when you say, I don't know, what how do you define the masculine and feminine in that regard?
Yeah, so I look at them as polarity and also energies. We both have, I believe, that men and women have masculine, feminine. Most men, bell-shaped curve, right, tend to be more masculine, right? The things that we do. So a masculine mindset is very doing-oriented, very task-oriented, very focused, right? So we're on task, we're on purpose, we're going to get stuff done. Whereas feminine energy is very free-flowing, if you will. It likes to be flowy, it likes to be free. Think of a woman wearing a summer dress, dancing, right? It's going to be very flowy, very very freeing, whereas a man would be maybe in a formal attire is going to be very, very structured. And so when you get into that structured area, you get into more masculine energy. Also, when you look at things that tend to be more testosterone related, things that we think of in our culture, Western culture, as more traditionally manly, right? Those are going to be more masculine oriented. And where you think of things as being more the traditional role for a woman tend to be more feminine, right? More the baking or creation that comes in there. The problem occurs in our society is nowadays women work, and they sometimes work in very masculine roles, and men might work in a more feminine traditional role, and there's nothing wrong with that. The problem is you got to make sure you reset polarity. And so what I mean by that is if I'm coming home to my wife, and I hear that's a lot from guys, this is what happened to me, I'll just tell my story a little bit to relate that so I don't have to pick on any guys. I had 3 companies. I lived in Santa Barbara, California. I was playing competitive sports still into my late 30s. And I only share this not to impress anybody, but to impress upon you that I was doing pretty well in all the traditional checkbox lists of things that guys do. I was a guy's guy. I still am. But when I came home, I wanted to make my wife happy. I came into the classic nice guy. Right. And so my wife, unbeknownst to me, I didn't know all this stuff at the time. Unbeknownst to me, that forced my wife not to feel safe. And I remember her telling me one time she didn't feel safe. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm super fit, you're safe. Trust me. I can protect you. And she meant, no, I don't feel emotionally safe. And as a man, I just what the heck does that mean? Right. But what happened was we lost polarity. So she had to become more masculine, which wasn't her natural thing. And it's not like she got tough or what have you, but she had to harden herself and close her heart a little bit, right, where I softened. So there was no polarity between us. And when we'd argue, we'd fight, right? So she would rise up kind of masculine in an argument. And, of course, you get 2 guys coming together. It's like getting 2 dogs getting at each other, neither back down, rather than having that masculine, feminine pull. And the way I can describe that is if you had 2 super magnets, the really strong magnets, and they can really attract each other and they're hard to pull apart. However, if you flip one of them over, they repel each other and you can't get them to go together again. And that's what happens in most marriages that I encounter professionally and socially is you have a woman who's become more masculine and a guy who wants to just keep the peace, right? I'm going to bite my tongue. I don't want to start a fight. I'm going to bite my tongue, sweep it under the rug, you know, and that's what I did. And that doesn't work. Now you've lost polarity in the relationship, and that's how people become roommates. You feel like, I got a roommate with a ring. And guys want to have more sex, but guys want connected sex just like women do. You want passion. We want our wife to look at us with love and respect in her eyes. You know, when we walk in the door, you want your wife to go, man, you crushed it today, Josh, right? You know, and be proud of you and be thankful and appreciative of all the hard work you put in.
Yeah, I actually had this conversation with somebody today. We very much feel like as men, like we feel loved when we feel respected.
Oh yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
that, and then what's really funny about that is we know that, or maybe we don't have the words for it. We know the things that make us feel loved, but then we tend to like do the things that are not respectable and then expect to get that back, you know?
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. It's counterintuitive. So one of the things that I'll talk to the guys about is, so I have an iPhone sitting over here. And so every time, you know, what is it like? You have an Android and an iPhone, you update your software on there 3-4 times a year, right? On average. I don't know exactly how much, but when's the last time you updated the software on your belief systems? When's the last time you looked in and figured out why is it you do what you do, right? And the way that I look at this from a coaching perspective is it a pattern, yes or no? You know, so usually if I'm asking that question of somebody, the answer is yes. But I do this of myself. Is it a pattern, yes or no? Then if it's yes, then the next question I ask Josh is, does this serve me to my highest level, yes or no? And if the answer is no, then I have an unconscious belief system that's causing me to do this over and over again. You know, the obvious ones for a lot of people are things like sedation, you know, exercise, eating, drugs, alcohol, pornography, gaming, things that people binge watching TV, things that all of us do to check out, which is good in moderation, no problem with most of those things. However, you know, if you're using it to check out and it's not serving you to your highest level, then why are you doing it? You're getting something out of it, right? So what is it and how can you replace it? And even these self-destructive patterns that we have, and we all have them. Anybody that says they don't, you know, is either completely unaware of their patterns or is lying. And I believe that most people are honest. And the person we lie to, you know, I find the person we lie to the most is ourselves.
Yeah, it's funny how easy that is to do. Like, people don't realize they do it, but like, yeah, we lie to ourselves. We tell ourselves that we're okay when we're not.
Yeah.
Because like, I think we misunderstand, like, okay, to be confident is one thing, you know, but if you're not confident about it, you need to figure out why and then address that, not just pretend to be confident, you know?
Yeah. I mean, there's something to fake it till you make it. I'm not discounting that to a degree, but we've developed these survival mechanisms at a young age, right? And you know, you see it with children, and I see it with the men that we work with. We own a 106-acre ranch here that we do retreats at for men, and we had 13 men here just this last week. And you see it with these guys. I mean, these guys, if you meet them on the streets, most of these guys are titans in their industry. You know, you would never guess what's going on internally because we as men don't share it with anybody because it's scary, or it's a sign of weakness. I don't want to appear weak. I don't want Josh to know that, you know, I don't have all my stuff together, that I don't know all the answers or whatever else it may be. Because why? Well, Josh might not like me. And if he doesn't like me, that means I'm not good enough. And if I'm not good enough, well, geez, why am I here? And it goes down this whole pattern. And having done this thousands upon thousands of times, I'd be a moron not to see patterns, right? Hopefully I'm not a moron, but I do see these patterns within men, and we're more common than we know, right? We assume that everybody else has got their stuff together, and they don't. We assume that if I tell Josh on a podcast that, I don't know, but that I'm not perfect, right? For some reason, first of all, it'd be ludicrous for you to assume that I'm perfect, but there's this natural and born fear that we have for some reason. And again, going back to the software upgrades, we really need to come back and look at our level of thinking and our belief systems, because we look at the whole world through that lens.
Yeah. So what do you say to those guys who are in that spot? They're stuck, you know, they're struggling in their marriage, they're struggling in their career, they're struggling with their health, to get disciplined or whatever. I mean, honestly, I'm in some of that myself. I'm struggling. I'm working real hard now to lose some weight and get back on track. I've kind of fallen off the wagon, so to speak, in terms of that. And so I know. So as I'm asking that question, and really that's the way this podcast works, right? Like and I'm sure you can understand that. A lot of times, things we talk about is because I need it more than anything else. How do I get unstuck? How do we get unstuck from those places?
A great thing. First of all, let me go back and I've been named the Forbes Council I've been named to all these coaching awards that I've received, and people ask, "Well, geez, how'd you get so good at coaching?" I'm like, I've just made more mistakes, and oftentimes I make them 2-3 times because I'm not as clever. I just make them fast. So when we're stuck, the key is just to take action. Right. And I know this sounds so simplistic, but most things that are true are simplistic. What is the smallest thing that you can do today, right, to move forward with the smallest thing? In the marriage, right, realize that you don't have, like, we were never taught the skills. Most of us were never taught the skills on how to be in a marriage, how to be in a partnership, how to communicate with your wife. We have a thing we call the triadic connection, right? So it's 3 key things to allow you to connect with your partner. And why is that not taught? Well, it's not taught because, there's all kinds of theories. Some people think they want us to be disenfranchised. Some people think it's just never been taught to humanity. I don't know the exact answer. The point is, go find that information, right? You don't have to come through our programs, but go somewhere. And same thing with fitness, right? Fitness and health is something that most people are working on. Our bodies don't work like they did when we were in our 20s, where you could go out and have breakfast burritos and, eat late at night and do whatever you wanted to do and still look good. It takes a little bit longer now. So it's taking the smallest step. So the first thing I would say is, what is the smallest thing you could do right now in this moment of insight to take action? Do that. And what that's going to do is allow you to get some momentum moving forward. I don't know about you, but I can overcomplicate things, right? And so let's just say fitness. Fitness is a common one that a lot of guys struggle with. A lot of guys will say, okay, cool, I'm going to get in shape. All right, now I'm going to come up with the perfect diet plan. I'm going to see what supplements I need. I'm going to, find the gym. I'm going to, they'll go through all the details.
And I'll start on Monday. Exactly. When it could be, you know what? I'm just going to put on my shoes and go for a walk. And we use the details as an excuse, and you've heard this before, I'm sure, is, someday I'm going to focus on my marriage, right? Okay, point out someday on your calendar. And one of the first things I do with a client, Josh, is let's just use fitness, marriage, whatever it is. I'm going to ask you, hey, what are your priorities? Let's in fact, we'll role play and you can make it up. You don't have to, I don't want to put you on the spot, but so Josh, you're 80 years old. You're sitting on your porch, sipping lemonade or whatever else you want. Get off my lawn.
Yeah.
Am I role playing well?
Yeah, you're doing great. And as you're sitting there reflecting back on your life, what are the things that are most important to you? What are you most proud of? Right? And so for most men, it's going to be their kids. It's going to be their wife, their marriage, and their family. Okay, right? And that's what I hear most commonly. Not always, by the way, but most commonly. And so then I said, oh, great. Okay. Josh, let's do a screen share, because a lot of my coaching is also done by video. Pull up your calendar. And people are like, what? No, yeah. Show me your calendar and I'll show you your priorities. And if I don't see your wife and kids on there, or I don't see exercise on there, stop BSing me and stop BSing yourself, because it's not a priority for you. It's a story. So, and my coaching style is very direct, and that's my job. My job is to be a reflection. Show me your bank account, right? I'll have my clients pull up their bank account. What you're spending your money on, you're telling me that you're voting. You're voting with your dollars. You're telling me that is your priority. I was very fortunate to be married to a woman who prioritizes growth. And so when we were going through our troubles, both of us sought out coaches and techniques, and we tried marriage counseling 3 times. That didn't work. It was like looking in the rearview mirror while trying to drive forward, right? Let's talk about all the bad stuff again and again and again. So we invested in the educational component, right? And learned skills that we didn't have. And that allowed us to move forward. So show me your calendar. I'll show you your priorities, whether it's health or anything else. If it's not in your calendar, guys, then either put it in your calendar, move things around, or stop lying.
Excellent. Yeah, so I've started, working out. I got a Y membership, and I've been working out. If I'm not at the Y, I try to walk at least a little bit every day. But I've noticed, like, people are like, well, what time do you go? And I'm like, I don't have that specific time yet. And I'm realizing, like, I need to put it on the calendar. This is the time that I do this, because it really stinks if you didn't do it and it's 9:00 at night and then you got to go take a walk outside in the dark and the cold because you didn't plan it earlier,
Yeah, well, it's true. And let's be honest, right? Like I'm in that situation a lot. Like right now, I didn't sleep well last night. I got a cold, as you can hear in my voice. So I didn't hit my workout. The reality is 9 p.m. comes around, I'm not going, right? It's too cold. I ate too late. I'll get it tomorrow, right? And it becomes the domino effect.
Yeah. Yeah, I noticed. I know this, that when I am more disciplined with those things, right, everything else kind of tends to fall in line too. That you say, what's the smallest thing you can do in this area? Well, when I actually deliberately get disciplined and I say, I'm going to take a walk every day, no matter what, and when I say I'm going to eat on this eating plan, no matter what, and like the other things line up. When I say, okay, every day I'm going to do this, I'm going to send a message to my wife in the middle of the day to let her know I love her, and she feels connected to me. We're going to pray together for 5 minutes at the end of the night. That's something we do. Like every night and it's, I, like, my wife is, she's a pastor. She's a super Christian. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And like, she could pray for days nonstop, and I'm like, okay, can we just like make this quick?
Yeah.
But when we do that every night, it connects us, it grounds us, it brings us to where, that discipline of doing it. And if we get off track, we feel it, and doing those small things every day that you're going to do, it affects every other area of your life too.
Yeah, it definitely does. And so one of the things we teach the guys is have 2 keystone habits, no more, right? Because, as I was listening to you rattle off, I'm the same way. I have this laundry list. When I'm dialed in, it's a laundry list of things that I do consistently. However, it's usually like 2 things for me. One is when I work out, I start doing all those other things, right? I eat better because I'm like, crap, I'm beating myself up here. I put the pizza and nachos away more often. So for me, it's exercise. And then another keystone habit for me is learning. And if yours is walking, then I'm going to recommend, or just throw out there, and I hope that's okay. I know you didn't ask me,
No, please.
But find something else you can tie into the walking, so you're committed. So if you can't go walking with a buddy or a friend, go with, find somebody you can get on a phone call with. If you can't go with your wife, or do something else to tie it in. So what you're doing psychologically is you're anchoring in the commitment. And what happens is, for most men, we'll let ourselves down, but I won't let somebody else down, right? I show up to the Y. If I know Josh is there, and I'm like, oh, I don't want to go. I don't feeling great. Crap, Josh is there. He's going to be there in 20 minutes. I got to go because I can't let Josh down.
Yeah.
But if it's me, I might do that. And so for a lot of my clients, they're paying a premium to work with me, and I'll have them. I'll be like, hey, Josh, all our coaching calls are walk and talks. That means is you're walking the entire time, on a treadmill or whatever, until that becomes a habit for you. And I'll do it too. And we'll go for a walk together or check in with me. Have an accountability partner. Every day I'm going to check in, and iron sharpens iron. I'm going to check in with you and just make sure you did your walk. And maybe my keystone habit's different. Maybe mine's reading. And so you're like, cool, Doug. I'll text you when I go for a walk. You text me after you finish 15 pages of whatever book you're reading. And if you don't do it, come up with some absurd, embarrassing thing, or put $100 on it, whatever you need to do to further entrench it until it becomes a habit. And then you move on to the next keystone habit.
Nice. So pick 2 at a time, and then once it becomes a habit, you just do it anyway, and then you do the next thing that you need to work on.
How many times do you write in your to-do list, brush my teeth? Right? We need to put these things in the brush your teeth category, not in the get a massage category.
Nice.
Right?
Good
That's the something so at our live events, I'll hear a lot of times from guys like, I just keep going back and for some reason I'll keep going back and watching porn, instead of being intimate with my wife, trying to connect. It's just easier, right? Because she could reject me. The porn site's not going to reject me. It's a quick fix, whatever that may be. And Doug, I just can't do it. That's what I'll hear. Basically, that's just a rough story. And I'll look at the guy and go, look, I've never done heroin personally, and I'm not here to judge anybody that has. But, and I've had this conversation hundreds of times, Josh. And I look at the guy and go, my guess is if you were blackout drunk right now, just you've been having beer all day, you're drunk, and I lay heroin on this table and I tell you to shoot up, you're going to say no. And guys are like, absolutely, there's no way I would touch that stuff. It's no problem. I don't care how out of it I am, not even a possibility. Okay, so you do have the discipline and the skill. You're just not applying it to this area of your life because you haven't made it an absolute. You've made it a maybe. And if you made it a maybe, well, there you go. That's the reason you keep faltering, is until it becomes an absolute for you and you've gotten massive leverage on yourself of why you need to do it, then you're going to keep faltering until it becomes a brush your teeth habit that you just don't think about. Most of us get up in the morning, brush our teeth, before bed, brush our teeth, don't even consider it. But the other areas of our life that we say are so important, again, that rocking chair test I talked to you about, being close to your wife as an example, we put it in the get a massage category, not the brush your teeth category. We wonder why we don't get results.
Doug, your website and your movement is called Powerful Man. What does that powerful mean to you? What are we talking about there?
We're talking about inner power, right? This is not macho, beat your chest, I'm going to go down, punch somebody in the face and show how tough I am. It's really about what I think the most courageous thing a man can do is look inside of themselves, because that's the scariest portion, and that's why most men don't. We celebrate firefighters for going into a fire, right? And saving people. Well, they're afraid, but they do it anyway. That's courage. That's what we call courage. Yet, as men, we might be afraid to have that difficult conversation with our wife. We might be afraid to show our weaknesses, right? But we look at men who do it anyway as there's something about them. And the way we define a powerful man, we use the analogy of a wolf, right? That's the logo behind my shoulder. And a wolf stands for wise, open, loving, and fierce. And these are characteristics that all men get to have, but the power comes from inside. So if I'm grounded and you and I are talking together, I don't necessarily need anything from Josh. I don't need Josh's approval, so we can have a great dialogue, and then it's not a transaction, right? All too often we're looking at what other people think about us, and that's a transactional relationship. I do this for you, you do this for me, and that's not a powerful man. A powerful man is someone who knows who they are at a deep level, likes who they are, and or is changing those aspects that they're not as happy with. I'm not here to judge anybody on what they need to be, but you define that for yourself, and gets what they need in the world from within themselves so they can pour out into other people.
Yeah, I like that. It's funny because the word power has so many different meanings and cultural connotations, and right now, like there are people who would say that men don't need to be powerful, that we need to hand that power off. And I think they're missing the point, but
I agree 100%. I mean, we got kicked off of Facebook, and that's what every expert's told us. It's just the name of the company, but that's not what we stand for. We're our mission statement, and that we don't talk about this externally very much, but our mission statement is we save children by starting with the father first. Right? That's really what we're about, is saving children. That's the whole movement's about. Our goal this year is to save 10,000 children, and we know exactly how we're going to do it. But it starts with the father and the family. And I know if I empower Josh, you're going to take that down to you're going to be a better husband, a better father, a better man, and a better leader in your community, right? And that's going to have a ripple effect. And that's not by you being a jerk. That's by you being so grounded in who you are that you start to spill love and spill greatness into other people. And that's why we started with just working with business leaders, is because they obviously had employees and staff and everybody else that they could trickle it down to. I mean, look, jerks don't try to save their marriage, right? They just move on and go to the next thing. So the men that we tend to work with, they want to come in, save their marriage for their families and themselves, of course, and then they end up saving themselves.
Well, I think that the family is the cornerstone of our Western civilization, like that's, and I know that may be a controversial thing to say. And I think we can also say it inclusively in the sense that, sure, there are people that I don't maybe agree with the lifestyle, or I don't agree with how they do their thing. And there are single moms out there who have whatever situation they've got, I still think that the optimal design makes the most sense. You know what I mean? And I think every kid needs a father figure in their life, whether it's an uncle or a grandfather or their actual father, preferably, And so, I think helping to save that marriage, helping to save that relationship, that foundation is a good thing.
I think it's a great thing. And statistics prove it. They've got studies. There's a TED Talk with a gosh, I can't remember what she is a doctor in, but she talks about a study specifically where if it's a single mother, and neither you or I are against single mothers at all, that's not what we're talking about here. The likelihood of that child, especially a male child, so a boy, going to jail is something like a 6x. But if the father's present, whether single father or just the father present, that drops dramatically. It's not the same. So it's having that male presence. And now, if we can get that guy to be grounded, secure, not volatile, right? The most dangerous guy is a guy that smiles but's volatile because he's hiding his emotions because you don't know when he's going to snap. But we get somebody who knows how to express themselves. We get somebody who feels secure, who is emotionally safe for the people that are around him. Now we've created an environment for children to thrive, for the wife to thrive, so she can go out and do what she needs to do. I really believe strongly, and I have this conversation with women all the time, especially when they hear the name The Powerful Man, as you can imagine. But that's not what we're about. We're about serving the men so that they can be cornerstones of the family. And I think women should do the same thing. Yeah,
I agree. I think that when we work on it, it makes things better. So, yeah, the culture that we're living in, I think, has we have the Andrew Tates of the world who go out there and say, 9 or 10 good things out of 20, yeah. and get people's attention. And then the other half of what they say is just garbage. And then, unfortunately, it paints this broad brush where then guys like us who are out there trying to help men be better men, get lumped in with the opposite of what we're trying to say. And it's a challenge.
It is. I did. So myself and we have a videographer that works with us. Great guy. He's 30 years old. We hopped in my truck. And we drove all across the United States and Canada, and we stopped by families that we've worked with, and we interviewed their wives. And because got so tired of answering that question, and like, cool, give me a woman's point of view. Like how is your husband showing up now versus he was 3 months ago or whatever it is. And you can get a woman's perspective on that, right? And the name, often she'll say, the name kind of threw me off, but that's not what it is. He's more powerful inside of himself, so he can hold a container for the family, right? Again, just talking to you, Josh, I can already tell, like you're talking about conversations you're having with your wife, you would work on yourself, first and foremost, I hope for yourself, but also as a sign of love for her, right? You want her to have the best version of you because you care about her. As most men do. We want to we'll fix our wife's car, we'll fix, whatever else it may be. And oftentimes what the women in our lives want is the version of us that they saw when they said, I do. Because she sees your potential, right? And we know it. You know your potential. And so she wants to see you thriving, and you want to see her thriving. And that's what love is. Love, it's not conditional, like, I'm only going to be friends with Josh if Josh fixes the lighting in my house. That's a transaction, man. That's not good.
Yeah, that's not love. So,
no, not at all.
Doug, you guys did a podcast episode a while back that I wanted to ask you about. And I think that I think it's relevant because we're talking specifically about men working on themselves. And I think that's the starting place, right? Like if I want to see a change in my family and I'm not doing anything to change, I can't expect anybody else to do that, obviously. But the question that you guys talked about was what to do when your wife's not willing to work on herself. And every time, it's almost a straw man argument, right? When you're having that conversation with a guy, like, what about her? What about, let's ask that question. What about her? What do you do when you're working hard and she's not? Like, how do you address that?
It's a great question. So we've done over 700 podcast episodes, and I think we've touched on that one probably a dozen times because it comes up so often, right? And here's how the conversation starts when so we have 2 entry programs, and one of them is on the marriage, and it's the only reason I'm bringing this up. So guys come in, and it's like, if she'd only realized what she had, if she'd only changed this thing, and this thing, our marriage would be perfect. But that's like throwing stones and having a glass house, right? And not turning around and cleaning up what I call your side of the street first. So that's what we teach the guys to do. Clean up your side of the street first. Are you doing everything well? Are you doing everything consistently? And 9 times out of 10, when I ask a guy and they're being honest, it's no. It's no. So I can tell you, like, if you go walk every day, Josh, you start working out. We have to teach a thing called the Alpha Rise and Shine, right? It's a morning routine that we do. We also teach guys something that's not talked about, which is a decompression routine at the end of the day. I would say, it's a made-up statistic, so but 80% of the time when the men come into our program and start doing that consistently, guess who else starts doing it? The kids, the wife, right? Even if they're picking on them, giving them a hard time, what is dad doing all of a sudden? Because when they start to see positive changes and the man shows up as what I would say is a true man, someone who leads by example and leads with love, so he's not tearing his wife down, he's not criticizing his wife, right? He's actually just bettering himself. Everybody else starts to fall in line because he becomes the leader in the house, right? You can encourage her to do things, but if I told you, hey, Josh, really, man, you really need to do this program. You really need to work on this. Does that feel good? That's like me telling you you're not good. And I think a lot of us guys do that rather than leading with love and leading with possibilities, right? So my wife and I were actually talking about our health and fitness, as well. And I was like, hey, babe, something I really want to work on is making sure that I'm just eating cleaner. Like right now I'm run down because I got this cold from the kids. I really want to eat cleaner. Is that something you'd be interested in doing with me? Now we're in collaboration. That sounds fun. It's much better than me going, yeah, I really think that you need to start eating better and taking care of your health. Because when I say that, I'm saying there's something wrong with you. There's a subtext there. I'm saying there's a problem. So to go back to your question, the key here is leading by example. If you are doing all the right things, then as the leader of the home, let's just say you're doing all the right things for 45 days. Not a long time. 45 days is pretty simple. You're doing them consistently, and you're not critiquing your wife. You're not rubbing it in her face. You're not criticizing her because she can tell. She knows if there's some animosity there. Women are really good at this. Then you can start saying, okay, hey, babe, I've been really working on this. I feel great. Is there anything like you want to work on? How can I best help you and support you? Right? That's a very different conversation. That's one of inclusion versus trying to get your wife to work on herself. Oftentimes when men approach that, there's a hint of resentment there, right? You need to work on this so that I can get that. And again, we go back to horse trading. We're in a trading relationship, and that just does not work.
Yeah. I think that concept of inviting her in to help you, like, hey, look, I know that for my health, I have to make this decision. Maybe, and this isn't me. I'm not being honest here. I'm just giving an example. Like I know I have to stop drinking. Like maybe some guy says that, maybe she doesn't want to do that. To ask her to support you in that. Okay, like she might say, well, I don't really want to give up drinking, but maybe I won't drink around you, which, that's a good start to that process. If you ask her to help support you in it, rather than just, you need to quit drinking. She doesn't want to hear that.
That's exactly right. Another way that I might approach that. So let's say in your example, I know it's just an example, your wife's drinking too much and you enjoy drinks too, but you don't think it's a problem. What you could do is you come up to your wife, if it's true for you, like again, I'm against lying. So if it's true for you, you come up to your wife and say, you know what, babe, I think I'm going to cut back on alcohol. I was just listening to the Andrew Huberman podcast on alcohol, podcast I enjoy, on alcohol. And I was just realizing how much damage it does to the brain, right? And to the blood-brain barrier it passes. So, would you be interested in supporting me with this or joining me on this journey? I think it could be something. And what you want to do is future cast, right? Here's what I want. So one tip I'll give you and your listeners is when you're talking to your wife, what you want to do is talk about what's going on for you, not her, right? Hey, babe, I realize that when I'm drinking, I'm starting to notice as I get older, it's a little harder to shake in the morning and I feel a little groggy. And what I really want is for our marriage, I always want to be on top of my game because I want to be able to spend every moment with you as we go. And in the future, what I really want us to do is moving forward is to be able to have intimate conversations and be close. And I'm finding that alcohol is preventing me from doing that. Would you be interested in joining me? That's a different conversation than, wow, you're drinking too much, you need to stop.
Right.
But you want to future pace and tell her, one, here's what's occurring for me on my side of the street, and here's what I want for us. And then invite her into that dream.
I think most of the time, as long as you haven't caused so much damage, right, that she's, if your relationship is to the place where she's not even willing to consider that, you've got some other issues you need to start working on. But I think most of the time you invite her in to your journey and your process, I think she's going to want to go with you.
Almost all the time. And so I talked about that triad of connection. So we have a thing called the clean slate method. And what that is specifically designed to do, we have the men do that in the first few weeks. All of them need to rewrite it probably a half dozen times with the coach, but it cleans the slate of the past, right? And so then they're able to move forward. So the damage, whether it be real or imagined, right? So trauma from the past, trauma for our actions, trauma for our inactions is a really common one that we see. You want to clean that slate so that you have a plan to move forward, so you're not constantly talking about the same issues over and over and over again.
Yeah, that's a good one because we can hold on to stuff and bring it up. And, women are good at that too.
They are. They're great at it. It's like
but you're right. I think, and that's really the key, I think, is we need to start and step up and lead by example. And that's where we're going to see the change that we want to see,
Yeah. Absolutely.
So, Doug, as we get here towards the end of our interview, I like to ask all of my guests a few questions, and I'd love to hear your perspective on these things. So the first question is this: what does it take to be a man?
I think in order to be a man, you need to know yourself. You need to know who you are. That's the good, right? The parts about you that are amazing, which is most of you. But also those places in the deep recesses of your subconscious, the skeletons in your closet. You need to really understand those because to me, you can't be trusted if you don't trust yourself or know yourself. And you are also not safe. And to be a man means, in my world, you get to be grounded and be a firm place to land and know yourself really well.
Excellent. Next question. You get your hands on a flux capacitor and you get it wired up in your Chevy Volt, and you happen to be able to get it up to 88 miles an hour and go back in time and talk to 10-year-old Doug. What do you want to tell him?
Ah, man. First, I'd give him a hug, right? I'd give him a hug, let him know I love him, and let him know that he's always going to be loved. I'd also let him know that, hey, man, this turns out really good. This turns out really well. Stay on your path. Keep your heart open, right? And you're going to be just fine. I might buy him some ice cream, take him out and do something fun.
Do you think he would have listened to your advice if you maybe if you got him the ice cream, he would, right?
Probably the ice cream. The ice cream would have put him over. I don't think he would have understood. Honestly, when I look back at this, I've done a lot of regression exercises and things like that, where you talk to your inner child or go back and look at it. My parents were divorced when I was 10, so I was going between houses. I'm trying to think back what was going on for me. I think he would have felt me. Do you know when you talk to somebody who's so genuine, and you have a conversation with them that you can actually kind of, you feel a resonance with them, so to speak? Or, when I'm with little kids, I get down their level and I really try to open myself up so they can feel the sincerity of what I'm saying. I think I know he would understand how sincere I'm being, and I think that would resonate with him.
Awesome. All right, my last question for you, Doug, is what is your best advice for the men that are listening today?
Man, my best advice is get off the fence. Go on one side or the other. Having your one foot on the dock, one foot on the boat's leaving. And I don't know about you guys, but I'm not that flexible anymore. So you got to get whatever it is, whatever's going on in your life. We look at 5 territories we talk about at The Powerful Man. That's self, health, wealth, relationships, and business. Is there an indecision in one of those 5 areas? And if there is, take action. Take massive action immediately. And one way you can look at it is rate yourself in those 5 areas. Where are you with self? Where are you with health, your wealth or abundance? And that can also be your religion, right? Where are you with your creator? Where are you with your relationships, with your wife, with your kids, with your friends? And then where are you in your business? And give yourself a number. When you look at that, most men find like, oh crap, I'm operating at like 40%. And oftentimes what's there, Josh, is an indecision. They're on the fence. I don't have enough time. I don't have enough money. I don't know what to do. These are all BS excuses. You find the time and the money to do the things you want to do. You can find the resources. You got a great podcast like yours, Josh, that guys can tune into. And just get off the fence, stop lying to yourself, and take action.
Well, again, like several other things you've said today, thank you. That was as encouraging and what I needed to hear today.
My pleasure, man. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Yeah. I appreciate it very much. And if our guys want to connect with you and the work that you're doing, what's the best way for that to happen?
Yeah, so we've done over 700 podcasts with experts on it, like yourself. But they can go over to thepowerfulman.com. We have all the resources right there. We have a private community. We have a public community, as many people do. And I think the podcast is probably the easiest thing. I'm all over social media. I get hundreds of messages a day. So guys, I'm not trying to be a jerk if I'm not responding to you. I'm a man. I'm a father. I got kids. So I'm a human. And so it's impossible for me to respond to everybody. So please understand, as much as my intention is to respond to everybody individually, I got basketball, tonight with my 6-year-old, and I'm one of those guys that practice what I preach. So I'm going to be the dad that's there at basketball, helping out. I'm going to be the father that's there with my kids. So I choose that over being on Facebook Messenger. So please understand, all due respect, that I'm all over the internet. You can find me pretty easily by my name. Just understand if it takes a while for me to get back to you.
Definitely. I understand that. That's starting to get more common with me to have messages, from guys too. So that, because it's still growing and still doing awesome stuff. But yeah, so I get that. And I'm like, somebody messaged me the other day and I didn't write him back. And he was like he just thought that I was going to answer it right away. And I'm like, hey man, you be patient. I got stuff going on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the thing is, and this is your passion, right? You want to get back to all these guys. I can tell you truly do. And I do too. And when guys are in hard places, they want answers, and guys like you and I want to help them and guide them along their way. At the same time, if I'm not practicing what I'm preaching, I'm not being authentic. And, that means I get to show up for my kids. I get to show up for myself. Then I can show up for the men that we're doing. And how can I help the largest number of men in the podcast, and doing things like this with you, obviously make the most sense.
Yeah. Well, that's what I like about our private Facebook group, because the guys will go in there, and if they ask the same question in there, they're going to get, a dozen responses from a dozen different guys with some different perspectives, and it's going to be actually more helpful than just asking me, because I know some things, but I don't know everything. So
no, none of us do, right? You got to have it's the power of a mastermind, right? Iron sharpens iron, and you want to find, the best place to forge that steel that you can find. And, a Facebook group is great. If you find like-minded guys that you resonate with, stick with it. You want to always be. I always want to be Josh. I want to walk into the room and feel pretty confident that I'm not the smartest guy in the room, that I don't have the answers. And you've heard this before. Otherwise, you're in the wrong room. And it doesn't mean the people, when I move to a different room, that the people in the previous room are bad people or at all or anything else. It just means I'm looking for something else. I'm growing in a different direction.
Yeah, excellent. Well, I'll make sure to put a link to your podcast and your website in the show notes. So if you guys are listening, you can go and connect with Doug and the work he's doing. And hey, man, I really appreciate you taking some time and talking with us today.
Likewise. Thank you so much for having me.
No problem. Doug, thank you so much for giving me your time and talking with me, sharing with me some of your journey, some of the things you've learned. And you guys who are listening, thanks for listening. Make sure you go and support the work that Doug is doing. And if you guys want to support what we're doing at Manlihood, remember, guys, the Manlihood Man Cave is a great place for you to get connected with other men who can help you level up and help you grow and help you be connected, really, to a community, to a brotherhood who can encourage you. So join that private group on Facebook. And if you have got something going on in your life and you want to talk about it, if this episode is resonating with you, bring it up in the group. Let's chat about it. As always, guys, leave us a rating, a review on Facebook. Share this episode with somebody that you know that would appreciate it. I want you to know, seriously, this is a movement. This isn't just Josh talking into a microphone, interviewing some random people on the internet. This is a movement. This is men like you making a difference. I appreciate you. Anyway, guys, I just want you to know, as always, I love you. I'm proud of you. And I'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Manlihood ManCast. If you want to be a better husband, father, leader, a better man, you need to join our private Facebook group, the Manlihood Man Cave. Join today. Please help us out with a like, comment, share, and subscribe. And check us out at manlihood.com.